Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well today. In this video, we are going to take a look at what exactly is international economics. So as you may know, I teach IB economics here in Santiago, Chile. And the thing is, like, a lot of people don't really understand what is meant by international economics. When somebody studies international economics, like, what are they studying? Are they studying politics? Are they studying economics? Or most people sort of understand the basic things of like microeconomics or macroeconomics. That's because a lot of adults have taken macroeconomic courses. But international economics is something that not that many people are familiar with. So I just thought I'd take a little brief second here, do a little video on like trying to send out there, just a simple message about what is international economics. Now, this video is going to be short. It's not designed to give you all of the details. If you want more information on each of the sections that I'm going to talk about of what's studied in international economics, check out the rest of the videos on this channel. And by the way, there are like 300 videos that cover the entirety of macroeconomics, microeconomics, theory of the firm, international economics, and development economics. So if you're an IB student or an AP student or university level student somewhere, and you're interested in more information on international economics, check out all of the other videos on this channel. This is just to give you a clear idea of what is studied in a course of international economics. So the basic idea of someone who studies international economics is you start off understanding or trying to learn, or looking at, I should say, of like the answer to this very simple question, like, why do countries trade? Like, why would a country who's very powerful, say like the United States, be interested in trading with other people? Because the United States is a massive country. They have the United States has within inside its own borders all of the ingredients to be the economic power that it is. It's the perfect ingredients. It has all of the stuff in the ground and around it: oil, coal, natural gas, copper, gold, food sources, massive plains, massive amounts of people, great industry, development, high level of education in order to produce and be the economic leader of the world. So why would someone like them want to trade with a smaller country, say like Panama? Well, this unit looks at what are the gains from trade and looks at two very important theories. One is called absolute advantage, another one is called comparative advantage. And those look at like when somebody has absolute advantage, it means they can produce more for less than someone else. So this is like two different countries, right? International economics talks about trade and interaction between two different countries. So one country might have absolute advantage in producing everything, but they don't necessarily have the comparative advantage. And comparative advantage theory takes a look at what the opportunity cost is. And opportunity cost is a very fancy way, not that fancy, but a way of saying if the country produces one product, what can they not produce? And the value of the thing that they're not producing creates an opportunity cost for that country. So if a country can produce more, but they have to give up more than another country in order to produce it, then they're not going to have the comparative advantage. So comparative advantage looks at one product between two countries, and they say, okay, so country A can produce more of this, but they have to give up more than country B in order to produce it. So country B, while they might not be as efficient or produce as much, they actually are the country that we want to have produce the good because they can do it for a lower opportunity cost. In other words, what they have to give up is less, what country B has to give up is less than what country A has to give up in order to produce the same good. So in the world specter, what we want is country B to make that good, not country A. We want country A to make what they can where they have the comparative advantage. So comparative advantage theory is pretty cool, okay? International trade is governed by the World Trade Organization. The World Trade Organization is a kind of a controversial thing out there for in world politics, but think of it as like the United Nations of trade. If the United Nations takes care of all it's like the governing world body of politics, the World Trade Organization is sort of set up to be the governing world body of economics, okay? Then, as you continue your studies, you will move into a a section called Free Trade and Protectionism, and that takes a look at what the benefits are of free trade, and then also why countries protect themselves. Like, what are the arguments for and against protectionism? And there are three main ways that governments sort of put up protective barriers for their countries. One is protective tariffs, another is protective subsidies, and another is, of course, protective quotas. So tariffs, subsidies, and quotas. The most common, and in the news in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of information about tariffs because that is basically putting a tax on goods coming into a country from other countries. Subsidies are handouts by the government or support, financial support by the government of one country to its industry within its own country in order to make that country's industry more productive. So let's say like the United States gives an enormous amount of money to Tesla so that they can not create cars, but create better batteries. And they may be doing that because the United States has an interest in Tesla, its own company, being the best at making batteries in the long run. And so they put a subsidy there to make sure that some other country doesn't produce or create a company, or a company from another country doesn't come in and own the battery market. Okay, and a quota is a physical limit put on goods coming into a country. So just imagine like old school, like the borders between countries, and like they count the bushels of corn that come into the country, and when they get to a certain level, like 100,000 bushels, like slam, they shut down the borders, and that would be a protective quota, so that only so many goods can come in from outside the country into its own country. And all of these are done, by the way, in a relationship between one country and another. So it'd be like, if the United States, I don't know, for some reason didn't want Canada to Canadian beef to come into the United States, they could put a quota on it, and they would just count up the, I don't know, pounds of beef that come in the United States, and as soon as they get to that limit, boom, later, no more beef from Canada for the next year, okay, or for the rest of the existing year. And then your studies of economics, international economics, would move into the study of exchange rates, which is super interesting because exchange rates talk about, of course, the value of one currency in terms of another currency. And there are three different types of exchange rate systems. There's the fixed exchange rate system, boop, the floating exchange rate system, bloop, and the mixed exchange rate system. Fixed is an exchange rate system where one country, usually smaller developing nations, whose currency is not as desirable on the international market, will fix their currency to another currency. A good example of this would be like Barbados fixes its Barbadian dollar to the US dollar, which means that the government maintains the same relationship, say like 2 Barbadian dollars to 1 US dollar. A floating exchange rate is like what you might be familiar with if you move around the world, which is where the currency of a country is allowed to float on the international market, and the international market is called the forex market, or the foreign exchange market. And as a result, it's just, it's susceptible to the supply and demand and desires of the free market in terms of whether or not people want that currency. And if that's based on a lot of different stuff, and check out the videos on exchange rate if you want more information on that. And then another one is the mixed exchange rate system, or a managed exchange rate system, same thing. And that's where the government actually sets like it's like a high and a low for its exchange rate, and allows it to sort of float in between. So I live in Chile, and the Chilean peso in the 8 years I've been here has floated between 450 pesos to the US dollar and out to 800 pesos to the US dollars. And I think the Chilean government just allows it to kind of float in between that, and it fluctuates. And that's an example sort of a managed exchange rate system. Okay? Then, as you move on in your studies of international economics, you will move into the study of balance of payments, which is a fancy way of just saying, you know what? It is the accounting. It's like a big checkbook for a country. And countries will take a look at how much flow is moving out of their country in terms of cash, and how much flow is coming into their country. So it's the flow outward of cash, and then the flow inward of cash. And then that is the balance of payments. And there's different accounts, and it gets all technical, and it sounds all confusing. But basically, if you know how to balance a checkbook, you understand balance of payments. There's the current account, the capital account, the financial account. It's just different types of income, different kinds of money flows that come in and out of a particular country. And that study of international economics, and that is, it sounds like, and I'm kind of saying like, it's not that big a deal, but it's actually really critical to the overall understanding of an economy, because if there's more money flowing out of Chile than there is flowing in, that's going to create some long-term problems for the Chilean economy, because it's depending too much on imports of its good, which would affect its exchange rate, and it gets more complicated. But the balance of payments is the fourth unit of study in almost all international economic courses. And the last one is economic integration, which we have a beautiful example now, in that, not now, my goodness, for the last 30, 40 years, depends on when you consider it to have started, which of course is the European Union, which is an amazing example. It's not amazing. It's an example of economic integration, which means that countries go from just being basically trading partners to being fully integrated, which means like completely integrated, a completely integrated economy where they share the same currency, they have the same central bank, they have the same fiscal policy, same monetary policy. But there are different stages to get there. In fact, guess what? There are 6 stages of economic integration, starting from just being like bilateral trading partners to full economic integration. And the thing that's interesting about economic integration is the countries, and the countries in the European Union, like they have to give up a lot of sovereignty in order to join a larger economic union. And the European countries who are fully in the European Union have done that, which is pretty amazing. If you want to like imagine a picture, just one last little thought here, imagine a picture of like what economic integration would look like in its fullest form, like a fully integrated fully integrated economic system between countries. Just if you can picture the United States, the United States is made up of 50 different states. Right? Of course, it's one country, but just go into fantasy world for a second and imagine if each one of those 50 states were its own individual country, but they had agreed to have one central bank in Washington, D.C., one currency, the dollar, and one agreement on who's going to control their fiscal and monetary policy, the U.S. government, right? This entity in Washington, D.C., the political people in Washington, D.C., and then you would have a great example of full economic integration. And of course, the European Union is not there yet, by design, because while they have a European Central Bank, while they have a European Parliament, the individual countries, France, Germany, Italy, and the other European nations, still have an enormous amount of political power inside their own countries. So they're just working towards it. But if you imagine the United States as 50 different countries that have fully integrated their economy, then you understand what full economic integration would look like. All right, so there it is. There's what you study in international economics. Why do countries trade? Free trade and protectionism, exchange rates, balance of payments, and economic integration. Well, there you have it, a quick little look and run through of exactly what is meant by international economics. My friends, it's fascinating what international economics will teach you, because it's in the news all the time. And of course, it's like one of those things that, the more you learn, the more you see it, the more you learn, the more you see it. But understanding how exchange rates work, how trade works, how free trade works, how tariffs work, quotas, subsidies, all these things that are embedded in the study of international economics will really, really help you understand not just the world around you, but the specifics about government policies. Politicians talk about trade all of the time, and a thorough understanding of international economics will really, really help you. All right? So congratulations on being curious on this. If you're launching into your studies of international economics, look out! You are going to end up being incredibly informed. All right, my friends, listen, this world really is our classroom. You need to move about this world with an open eye, a loving heart, and a keen sense of what exactly is going on. And of course, a study of economics will really help you do so. All right? Take care of yourselves out there, my friends. Be good to one another as well. And we'll talk to you in a bit.